Good afternoon, everyone. This is Frank Conkling with Panda Consulting, and I am so happy today to have Joshua Carlson from Kendall County, Illinois, doing a demonstration of what they're doing. This is, again, the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric Workshop. Panda Consulting's ArcGIS Parcel Fabric Workshop, and we're going to be exploring and Joshua is going to show us some of the things that he's doing on here. As a real quick introduction, let me just go in and tell you, Kendall County is up in the northeast corner of Illinois. Kendall County Technology Office actually has 3 people that do parcel mapping. We've got Megan Brigante, we've got Joshua Carlson, and we've got Cameron Zabel on here. And so it's with 3 people. They're doing all the work there. They have approximately 52,000 tax parcels. If you actually could look closer at the table of contents, this is a screenshot from when I actually did the migration out of their data from topology-enabled simple features into the parcel fabric. They have tax parcels and ownership parcels and lots and rights of way and blocks and condominiums and subdivisions and corporate areas and political townships and hydrology together with PLSS. I don't know whether they have that all information still. And Joshua can comment on that. We did this migration. Actually, Kendall County was one of our first. And we did this in December of 2019. Gave it to them, and they have been flying with this thing. And that's what we want to get Joshua to show us. Quick overview, some of the topics that we have. Just, they're doing some interesting things with their record structure. They're doing some very interesting things with dashboards and sharing information with dashboards. They're using ArcGIS Enterprise 10.9, ArcGIS Pro 2.8, so they are on the latest release. They have Amazon services that they're using. Their database is Postgres. They use Python. They use Jupyter notebooks. They're doing ETL to on-premises hosted publication services. They are backdating data. They use labels and services, map images, and they use subtypes and points and connection lines, I think. So we have got an awful lot to talk about. Yeah, you can see Joshua just laughing here, but there is so much topics. I can tell you, Joshua and I had a discussion last week, and we had a hard time just cutting it off after an hour, just going over some of the simple things. So Joshua, I'm going to let you share your screen now. All right. And you can move forward from it, and we can use this outline if you want, or you can just start talking about things. And I'll try to go and sort of keep us on some sort of route here. All right.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm going to stop my share. So you should be able to go and share this now.
And I will share screen 2. Oh, and then I got to click share.
There you go.
Okay, cool.
So Joshua, what did I miss on our discussion from last week?
What did you miss?
Yeah, what did
I don't know. It was a bit of a whirlwind of stuff. Let me see. Oops.
So Joshua, before we start, tell us about yourself. You said last week you went to school in Wisconsin. So tell us more about yourself.
So I went to school. I was a returning adult student at UW Parkside in between Racine and Kenosha. And I got my degree in environmental studies, but I got a minor in GIS. And it turns out that's what I really liked doing. And then I just did some GIS and other random stuff for the university after graduating. One of those projects ended up being helping digitize old plat maps for the school archives. And somehow just looking at enough old legals and plat maps, when the job posting came up for here at Kendall County, I was like, that sounds really cool. I'm going to jump on it because I'm actually from not Kendall County proper, but the region. So it was a lot closer to family. I have a wife, I have 3 children, and my children are very young. So being close to the grandparents is a major selling point.
It is. It is.
But I've been here for about 2 years, which is long enough that I no longer trust my data at all dealing with land records. When there's a discrepancy, it's usually, oh boy, when did this go wrong? We've got all kinds of artifacts from the prior GIS system, the CAD before that, and the paper maps before that. And sometimes the errors started in 1800 something. So the usual, I think. But it's fun. Megan is not here. She's out today, but Megan's pretty great. She gives Cam and I enough freedom to pursue different ideas, which is how a lot of what I'm gonna show us came about, because I would say, well, I want to check out, what if we access this programmatically and did a script, or what if we did this other method? And she'd be like, give it a shot, see if anything comes out of it.
Cool.
Yeah. So
by the way, Cameron just posted in the chat window that she can attest to the awfulness of some of the data sometimes. So yeah. So a little background, again, you were using an Amazon instance, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
With Postgres on it. All right.
Yes.
Did you have any problems setting that up, or?
Not initially. So we had been set up with just a multi-machine AWS setup, and then we were using Amazon RDS for our Postgres database.
Right.
And that was fine at the beginning, but as soon as the Parcel Fabric hit version 2, there was a mismatch. The newest Parcel Fabric needed the newest Enterprise Geodatabase, which needed PostGIS 3.0.1. And in RDS, you have no control of what version extensions you have available. So RDS capped it at 3.0.0. And that even didn't come out until Parcel Fabric 3. Anyway, there's been a mismatch since then. If we were still on RDS, we would still be at Parcel Fabric version 2, I believe. So we moved all of that to, we have a separate instance that's just running Postgres on it. So we have more control over how that database operates, which is, it's not that much more work, just having to tell it to vacuum itself every now and then, set up the roles manually, and not too big a deal, but also an EC2 instance that runs comparable to an RDS instance is cheaper. So, so we saw some cost savings there, and barely any increase in maintenance of the database. So it was nice.
By the way, I was just corrected. Cameron is a male, not a female, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Sorry about that, Cam. So you also mentioned to me last week that you've got the Fabric on one instance, and then you've got hosted services that you use for publication on another. So you sort of split the distribution and the way it's all set up.
Yeah. So our services, we have our enterprise geodatabase, and there is only one thing on it, which is the Fabric, because for basically everything else, for all of our people who do field work with surveys, for people who need to access public maps, none of that stuff has yet to require the added functionality of an SDE. The only people who need it are the people editing the Fabric. So we actually keep that database instance totally separate. And anything else we just move all of it to, we just move it all to hosted layers because it's being backed up the same as anything else. And between the editor tracking settings and the syncing and stuff, it's got almost everything we would want. Occasionally, I wish I could do attribute rules, but I would say, 99% of the uses that we have in our organization's layers, hosted is more than enough. And with the updates that keep coming to ArcGIS Enterprise and Data Store, those hosted layers are able to do more and more. So, and one of the things that we like is in the hosted, we have our fabric as a service. This is the stuff that only we get to see, but then we have a hosted copy of it. One thing I like about the hosted layers is I can create views really, really easily that stay in sync. So for current things or things that were active when the 2020 parcel year got certified, I can create those off of this. So a big thing we're going to talk about is how do I keep the hosted thing synchronized with the real thing? And that was something that took a bit to figure out. But now that we have it, because this one is a hosted layer, and let me open this up. Because it's a hosted layer, all of our public maps and apps, because they are not editing anything, they can just reference the hosted stuff, which tends to perform better through Portal. And it's always on. When the portal's on, the hosted layers are available. This, the real fabric, so to speak, we don't need it outside of business hours. So we're actually able to schedule the EC2 instance to just turn off at the end of the day. So you only pay by the hour. So for 14 hours a day, we don't have to pay for that database to be up and running.
So you only pay for it for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you're
right.
done.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind it, I don't know whether you know this or not, how much does it really cost? I mean, how big of an instance do you have? That sort of thing.
I don't know off the top of my head. Oh,
that. We don't need to go down this rabbit hole unless you want to.
Well, no, I'll just jump into it. I don't mind if you guys see that we have a few instances. The Postgres, what is that? That's an T3 X large.
Okay, so it is X large. Okay.
Yeah. I don't have the billing stuff handy, but when we moved to just scheduling it to turn off at night, that was a pretty significant cost savings. And moving away from RDS, which is more expensive than EC2.
Okay, so this change records dashboard that you have, you were showing me this last week. This is actually running off of the hosted service. And the hosted service, you can pull all the individual feature classes over, but not the fabric object, correct?
Correct. So these don't have relation classes. And they're not everything from the fabric.
And those are only polygons. Those aren't any line layers or anything, correct?
Yeah, I have a separate layer for lines, and we'll get to that. But, for the public maps, when you're looking at, this and you're just looking for assessment information, you don't care about the lines. You just want to know that's the parcel, here are its attributes. Yeah. That's all you really need to know. Or if I'm looking at this change record, I've got this record. Well, it took this and it split off that. So, I don't need to have the lines on here for most of our users. And for the people who do need it, we have those available as their own hosted layer as well. But what I wanted to get into is one of the benefits of doing it this way too is I get to control the schema over here. So instead of just having all of the parcel fabric schema, which a lot of this is based on like you're working in the fabric. You need it to have the global of the record,
right.
You know, but a lot of this is, hey, look, there's the guy who moved these over.
I know, yeah. In December of
but a lot of
2019,
this
yeah.
stuff, yeah. But a lot of this stuff, you know, to the end user is useless to them. It's great for internal quality control, but they don't need to know if it's a seed. So, so when I move it over, I do a little bit of the T in ETL, but I also bring in the document fields from the records class. Oh, come on. So like this pin was created by this document on this date. Those are, how did we get stuff from the 50s? I don't know. I scrolled too far. I just want a couple examples here. But anyway, you know, it would be nice in the fabric, well, not in the fabric because it doesn't work that way, but for the end user, if I click on a parcel, I might want to know what document created this and when, or what document retired this and when. So having...
And that document information, you've actually modified the record schema, correct? And stored that over in the record so that every record basically is a reference to a document. And in there, you've gone and recorded the recording information, the type of document and such, correct?
Yeah, so if I have my my records, you know, we have the name, and in our case for Kendall County, we just associate the names with the well, those ones are imported.
Those were, yeah, there was the imported stuff that I did to create it.
Yeah, where's my record type? Or do I have? There. Okay, we'll drop the imported off. So these are just the 12-digit numbers that go with the recorder's office, so that I know the record that did whatever this did, I can look up that number on our county's recorded document system and see the deed itself. We have a field for when it was recorded. Well, that's the built-in one, the recordation date. But when it was recorded, you know, that's nice to know, but sometimes I also want to know when did the GIS department actually process it, because sometimes between the assessment cycle and the treasurer's office, there are reasons we have to hold it until maybe February 13th, even though it was recorded back in, oh, that one was quick. But sometimes it'll be recorded in March and it doesn't get processed until June or something because of something holding up the process. So we added that field in so that we can keep track of those separately. And then we really utilize the record type in different ways. So, you know, back on this change record, because this document, you know, I can see here it is, it's got a deed, or it is a deed, it was recorded then, it was processed then. I can just use the attribute to link it straight to our recorder's office. There we go. Anyone who's interested can find the deed that did the thing that they're looking at.
Right.
And then they can click the link and see the change record that generated with some terrible aerials and get some information about it.
And you told me this change record was something that gets automatically created. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see these before they hit the website. That was another thing I liked about the hosted layer is the records. I can just enable attachments, and then attach change records to it. Sometimes we have owner requests where there's a second form, and we put that on there too, so that we can track down how did this get initiated because it's not in the recorder's system. But yeah, we have those. And if I grab a more recent one, I found out that our imagery service, when you bring in a web tile map service to Pro, it assumes that the highest level of detail is 19. You have to bring it in a different way to get past 19. Well, that one still doesn't look great, but anyway.
Interesting.
So back to it though, having the ability to control the schema on the hosted side and create views off of that is really nice, but keeping it updated.
Right. So you have just sort of to summarize this. And by the way, if anybody has any questions or anything, please put them in the chat window. Chris is moderating it. He's watching it, and we'll make sure that Josh goes and handles all those. Try to do it as we're going. So you have basically parallel systems. You've got the actual fabric that's getting edited and updated all the time, and you're wrecking and posting to that using branch versioning. And then you've got this publish service, which is basically a component of those features, but you've got to try to keep them in sync somehow. So how do you keep them in sync?
Yeah, so that's where we get into Python and Jupyter notebooks and all that. So I've got this, hold on to your hats. I'll try not to go too in depth, but so I have this notebook and I can share this later, like share it as a file. But basically, we connect to our portal and, there we go. We connect to the portal and we've got the URL for our fabric and then the hosted copy, fabric service, fabric hosted. And then I have the boundaries. I don't get into that. I didn't get that far because of all the interruptions today. But anyway, so what it looks like, because the fabric, everything's got, maybe it's not, it's got, the editor tracking fields. So because of that, I can say, well, I want to query the records layer, anything that was edited after this timestamp and isn't an imported record. And then poof, there's 11. And I have, this is the schema from the Parcel fabric, the real deal. You can see Cam was in here and he was doing some splits. I don't need all of these because not all of them come over to the hosted side. So I drop them, getting down to just the stuff we need. And oh, that was an important point. I'm sorry. On the hosted side, every layer on here has an attribute called fabric GUID, which corresponds to the global ID of its counterpart, right? So that's just, you add a GUID type field.
Right.
So that's it. I just rename that field just because it makes it easier. So I have my fabric records that have been modified since Tuesday. So that's all I need from the fabric. This is the attributes that I'm going to bring over to the hosted side. So then I take the hosted layer, because some of these, edited doesn't mean new. It could be new, but it might just be an update. So what I do then is I take a list of, using pandas, you can take any attribute and just say to list. So I've got a list of the global IDs for my service features or record features. And what I'll do, I can turn it into this comma delimited string of strings. And what I'll do here is that I'm going to sandwich that inside of an SQL clause. So when I query my hosted features, I'm going to say where the fabric GUID is in
That list,
this,
right?
that list.
That array, right.
I only need the fabric grid field and the object ID. I don't even need the geometry. I want a data frame. There we go. And I'm just calling the head method because I could just drop that. And if it's longer than I think 30, it kind of gives you the top and bottom. But I really only need to see the schema to make sure everything's coming in right. So I just, head gives you the top 5. So I have these, and because I have, oh, here comes my wife. Anyway, yeah, I'm in the laundry room, by the way. That's working from home. So I have the object ID, and I've got the GUID field that matches up above. So all I'm going to do is merge that in. Oh, and I reset the index to be that field just because it makes some things easier. So I merge them, and then it spits this out. And this is now my list of fabric records from the real fabric. And then it's got tacked on at the end the object ID of their associated hosted record, if one exists. If one doesn't, it'll just say NaN, not a number. And I'll tell you right now, the not a number or not a time, which you see in date fields, those will really throw, that'll really throw some functions when you're trying to edit or update stuff. So I just always include this to switch those to nones, because it interprets those as nulls instead of trying to bring in the not a time or the not a number. Is like a special kind of float. And it's really, really screws things up when you try to submit edits. So I just tack that onto everything I do. And by the way, if this is seeming like utterly complex or weird, that's because it is. But this is sort of the exploded view of the process. Once I'm done with this, I'll show the real thing that we have. It's not as bad as this. This is just trying to demonstrate every step of it separately. So this is almost right, except record type, it's still integers. On the hosted side, I like those to be sort of human readable strings, because I don't know what client the end user is using. They might not have something that's going to look into the service definition and translate those. So I have it grab the domain from the Fabric service, and then it uses this assembled dictionary and replaces them. So then my record type is the textual equivalent of this. So now that's all I need, actually. What I have now is a data frame of the edits since last Tuesday, and the object ID I should be applying these to. So the first thing I'll do is by using this statement, the LOC where records object ID is an A. I think this will be empty.
So yeah. This is where you have no existing object ID matching it.
That's right.
So it's an add.
No existing object ID, it's an add. There's nothing in this one because there's nothing to add. But if there was, you go through this, and the important thing here is this, it's edit features, adds equals feature set. For any kind of pandas data frame that is being used in tandem with the ArcGIS Python API, they add a little spatial submodel to the pandas data frame object, which, you know, I don't like that they're just sort of shoehorning something into something else, but it's a great feature if you're doing stuff solely in the ArcGIS kind of ecosystem. So calling a data frame and then saying spatial I can access spatially enabled data frame functions. You can look up the Python API docs for that. But one of them is toFeatureSet. So what I'm really doing here is I'm taking the first 100 rows, turning them into a feature set, and then submitting that feature set as my ads. The reason I do this is when you're submitting ads and updates, you really shouldn't do them all at once. You should chunk them out. So this is just until we reach the length of that list, it's going to go through and do it. There's nothing. So, but updates similar, except right here, I want the things where object ID is not empty, which is everything else. And because this is a one-way update, I'm not bringing updates back from the hosted side. So I don't really care about the existing attributes or shapes. I'm assuming that if it was updated since that last timestamp, that I want to refresh it with any and all attributes in the fabric. So that's why I only brought in the object ID. So it's the same kind of loop, except now it's edit features updates equals this. And I'll go do that. And there we go. It spits out whether or not it was successful. So those first 100 or fewer rows, they updated. If there was anything in the hosted side that didn't match this, which it wouldn't because I just tested this like 10 minutes ago. Well, no, it's 40 minutes ago. But anyway, it would be updated now. And then deletes are more complicated because there's nothing in the fabric that says, here's the date that this was deleted. That's not quite true. There is a function called extract changes that you can use, but I feel like they're still working on that because I can't get it to behave consistently. So, so what I do instead is I just take the global ID field, I take the whole thing. Since it's no geometry and it's one field, and I'm also saying not imported records, it really doesn't take that long. There we go. I think that's like 800 or something. And then I take the hosted ones, same thing. And what I'm doing, I'm going to merge these together and just look for, let's see, I'll just do this. I forgot. So there's nothing in here. There's nothing to delete. But this column, by telling it I want an indicator, that'll tell me in my merge, was it in both tables? Was it in the left only or the right only? By doing my merge this way, left only means they were only in my hosted table, which means not in the service, in the hosted, they should go. So then I take that list of object IDs, and then I send them to edit features, deletes equals this. And one thing with the delete features, if you have an empty list, it'll error out. So just sticking a little if on there. So that's the records. And that is kind of similar to the other layers, but except for one thing. And this was an important thing because, you know, I mentioned that when I have lots in here or something, I want to bring in what document created it and when, or if it was retired, I want to bring in that information as well. And I would say the one caveat with this method that I'm demoing is if I went into my records table and I just updated the type, the records timestamp is going to change, but not the associated parcels. So I need some way to make sure that my parcels are also getting updated with any record changes. That's probably the downside of bringing record fields into my parcels, but it's not too difficult.
Right.
What I do, you notice earlier we got that list of IDs.
Right.
So when I query my parcels, where are we? The where statement just like before, I'm saying anything edited since then, or the created by record field has one of those, or the retired by record has one of those. So this is going to get anything that was directly edited or associated with an edited record. And there it is. And I could look at like, how many is that actually? That's not too many. You know, if we've had a busy week, sometimes by associating with records, this can balloon out to several hundred. But anyway, so I've got all these fields though. I don't need most of these in the hosted side. So I just define the list of things.
Right.
Yeah, I want them dropped. There we go. And then I want to rename the global ID to that fabric GUID again. Just like before, I'm going to get my hosted parcels that match not the records this time, but just the IDs from the parcels table. So any corresponding parcels.
Right.
Just like before, we merge it, we have them. This is where it diverges from the records, because now all I have is the global still. I don't have the actual details. So there's a separate process where I get the list of created and retired IDs from here, and I'm just gonna get a new data frame of associated records. And I only want the global, the recorded date, and the name. And then I merge those back into the parcels. And you can see them over here. There's the record name, there's the recorded date, but these are all, the names are screwed up because they didn't have the name I wanted when I merged them. So I just rename those. I rename them, and then it's still messy because I have these extras. I don't want them. So I just do another drop. And then when I pull that out, now I have the fabric GUID, the PIN number, parcel subtype, because we have like leaseholds and ownership parcels, we subtype those out. The document created it, the date it did it, the document that retired it, the date that happened. So now we have those in as regular old columns like we have over here. And then, and this is where I ran out of time before we started, then I take this parcels data frame that we're looking at right here, and I just do the same
as you did with the records.
Adds, updates, and deletes. Yep. So I wanted to talk about how you can actually deploy this and make it sensible. So this was just on a local Python notebook. But up on the ArcGIS Online, you can create notebooks here. And one of the great things about this is, as of the last update, you can schedule tasks in the ArcGIS Online notebooks. So I have a task that every night after I'm pretty sure we've all stopped editing the fabric, or we should have, otherwise you're working late. Oh, and by the way, this only hits the default version. So if I've got a big sub that I'm working on and I'm not done with it, as long as I don't reconcile in post, it's not going to pick it up. That was, sorry, I should have mentioned that too.
That's okay.
So as long as I don't post my edits, there's no risk of incomplete data showing up. And I could go in and manually trigger this process anytime if I had to like undo something. But what I wanted to talk about was using custom functions, which is something I do a lot here. In this, you know, a lot of this looks really similar. There's no reason that we have to do it separately. And for like 7 different polygons that I'm outputting and all the lines and points and stuff, you know, if you're doing everything out into the global space and creating data frame objects, you're going to run out of memory. So keeping it inside of a local function scope, you don't have to worry about that as much. But if I get in here, so I've got a layer update where I supply it with a data frame, the service it's supposed to hit, and it does that, that process we just went over with some logging and error handling. And I can share some of this, but as I get more and more specific, it might be diverging further from the average user's schema or use case. But by doing this, I have a custom function for the layer updates, the adding and deleting, and one that gets the changes, one that gets the associated records. I have all of these that kind of fold into one another so that when I'm doing something like right-of-way lines, I just have it get the associated records based on the output of getting the changes of service layer, hosted layer, based on a certain timestamp. And I could have put this all in one big thing, but if something goes wrong, I like to just break the cell right here and look at what this data frame is. But then it just takes that and it has an add, update, delete function that does all that. So it's really two functions that do a bunch of other stuff, and then it logs it. And it'll go through and say, oh, there's this many rows that were updated, this many that were added, this many that were deleted.
So when looking at it and the number that you're doing, while the notebook and the code is fairly complex to start up, the reality is it's not that much that you're changing, so that it should go pretty quickly. Whereas when the traditional ETL just says delete everything and everything just added over there again, which can often take a very long time.
Yeah, when I am, so actually, let me back up. So I have a table. It's just a hosted non-spatial table that I use as if it were like a server log. And I just have it, I have a, where is it? Anytime you see log add, it's gonna spit something onto this table. I give it a level and a message, and that populates like my admin dashboard. So I can see for the geometry update notebook, I can see that it took 4.7 minutes. And it tells me when each portion of the process finished. The points always take forever because there's a ton. But so I can see, oh, there was some changes in the records. And every day I can just come in here and see like, well, what happened yesterday? And then I have a separate table of timestamps. And so when a layer gets officially updated, it is going to update that timestamp. And then I can see, oh, great. My right-of-way lines, they updated yesterday at 4:48, right when it should have. And if anything, this is just in descending date. So if something's not updating, it's going to fall to the bottom. And I'm going to get a notice on my indicator that, oh no, one of my hosted layers is out of date. And maybe I don't care about all of this stuff. I can just, get my warnings and errors. But so definitely using non-spatial tables as sort of auxiliary tables to kind of power this update. I don't have to keep track of when it was last updated because the script is just filling in this timestamp when it completes it. And then the next time it runs, it is querying this table to know where to pick up. There's other stuff too. If you did decide to try and deploy something like this on your own, There's a function in here that's super important, and I want to mention it, is the layer dictionary function. So what that's doing, and there's an explanation of it. You know, in this one, I was just using the actual layer index, but when you update your Parcel Fabric version, as I'm sure you've noticed, the schema changes. And so if you have a script that's looking for layer 1, that might not be records anymore. So in this, instead of looking for layer 1, I can instead just say, I have my dictionary of service layers, and I want the ownership parcels lines, and I want their layer index. So
right.
Even if the order of layers changes, as long as I don't change the name of the layer, it's always going to find it, no matter where it is in the index.
And I'll let you breathe here for a minute, Joshua. So what Joshua was just referring to was that when you've got a parcel fabric that's being served out with services, and you update the data set to go and migrate it from release 1 to release 2 to release 3 to release 4, Esri is adding new feature services to it, whether it's adjustment layers or they're adding and changing the order of those, so that in the service itself, the actual index, where it's located in that service, changes. And because of that, these index numbers, you can't always rely upon them after you've updated the service. So you just want to be aware of that. And that's true with almost any service that you're using a web service on. So go ahead, pick it up again.
Well, this was just, so that was just me trying to sort of future-proof my own thing. You know, another nice thing about kind of layering anything into custom functions that you can is when you run into an error and it gives you that stack trace, you can see the stack trace go back through each of your functions. And you can see what process it's failing at. Excuse me.
So this is actually very, very impressive, Joshua. So how long did it take you to go and develop this?
I could look that up, I'm sure. We had some downtime after the parcel year closed, and we were waiting for the next one to open. And I just got this idea in my head. It went through a few different iterations. I probably spent like a good week on it, just kind of playing around. And then, you know, maybe the next week it ran a few times, and then the fourth time it hit a road bump, and I wasn't accounting for maybe you would add a record that wasn't imported, but you wouldn't include a date. And I needed to have something to handle null values there. That's where a lot of these replace non equals none.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of those come from, was it failed. And I had to go, what happened? And then we changed some other stuff as we updated our some of the schemas and stuff. But I would say it was like a good week or maybe 2 weeks, and not working on it all day, every day. I would take a break and do something else.
So just sort of to bring it up, because you and I had this conversation last week about the fact that what you're relying upon a lot of times is the record and the geometry of the record. And as you make a transaction and do a build of that current record, or even a build of extent, and I know you don't use build extents very often, but build of active record, it updates the geometry of that record.
Yeah, that's right.
That is, and I checked and verified that is not true for file geodatabases, only for service. Is it actually updating the geometry of the record? So just be aware of that. And again, you won't be doing this with a file geodatabase, but if you're using a web service, just know that those record polygons are getting updated as you make a change in the lines and polygons that define that parcel.
Yeah. So like here was an example where not this one in particular, but in some of these townhome situations, we'll have ones where the record was built, I think before the remainder was in there properly. And so even though the parcels involved were like this, the record was, a smaller shape. So we have had times where we go in, activate the record, click build, and then come back out and it's fixed. But yeah, so just to reiterate, having these fields available per layer, that's what gives me the ability to do something like this, where I'm clicking this and based on the document number, it is looking for things that have either the created by or retired by attribute that matches. And so I can see, here's a right-of-way taking that took that little piece.
And you said your appraisers or some of your other...
This is mainly for our township assessors, who want like a brief overview of like, well, what happened? They get a smaller one here. A lot of farm parcels. So they get something like this, and this parcel's been around for a bit. They have the assessment for that. Well, now it's 2. So they'll come in just to get a visual overview of what happened. And then if they want more information, we have that attached change record in all of its pixelated glory. It shows them exactly where it is, and then gives them more information like who used to own it, who owns it now, if there's anyone on record.
So that brief, I'm intrigued by this brief legal description that's appearing on there. How are you capturing that?
So a lot of times we're writing that. That's another thing that happens though. If I go to the parcels table, there's a bunch of other information in here. And there's actually a separate script. So all of our assessment data is just in a in-network only Microsoft SQL database. But what I have is a script that just queries that database. And I don't have it on this machine because this is not a local machine, but let's open yet another tab.
So that's just a view into that join table?
No. So what's happening here is I have a script that runs and it queries that Microsoft SQL database, and it uses pandas to, the Python pandas.
Right, not Panda Consult, Python pandas, correct.
Oh, wait a minute. This is Gamma. I don't want that. I want assessment data because that's a little simpler. So I have it queries the assessment database, pulls out certain fields and reshapes them as needed. And then it goes in and it finds, where is it? It's been a while since I looked at this one, but it goes in and it gets my, my parcels layer. The hosted ones, the index isn't changing, so I felt like it was safe.
Okay.
Use the number here. But so it goes and finds those, and then it's just going to query them and join in. This one does a little bit different, where it's using a comparison function. So this one is looking for like what's different from what's already there. And anything that's changed, i.e. the assessment database was changed, then it's going to subset it and then use that to update these. But it doesn't deal with shapes at all. So it's not touching the geometry. It's just literally updating attributes based on what's in the assessment database.
Interesting.
So that's running nightly after the geometry updates. But yeah, so all of these, because we want people to be able to see that information, but managing, before we had like an ad hoc map join with the parcels and the assessment database, and then publishing that as a service, and the performance was awful. And there were like 20,000 copies of OP join throughout our file system because it was just a mess. Cam can attest to that one too.
Yeah.
So we just have the authoritative parcels that we have, and then every night it's looking for, are there any changes to their assessment details, bring them in. So if someone goes in and logs a sale and says, well, now it's not John anymore, he sold it to Frank, your name will pop up there at the end of the day.
The end of the day. Interesting.
Yeah. So that way I don't, like, anyone who questions anything beyond the geometry itself and the records fields, anything past alternate pin, I can say, well, that's just coming straight out of assessments. If it's changed today, just check tomorrow. And I don't really have to care about these after that point.
So I'm going to ask you to now jump way back. Okay,
yeah.
Let's move out of the weeds here.
Okay.
Let's look at more generalized things, because, by the way, we're coming up on 5 minutes to 4 local time here, which is almost an hour already. We were talking about how long is this going to take, and Joshua said, well, I'm not even sure I have an hour's worth. And I was like, oh, don't worry about this. So
okay,
move it back out. So you've now been using branch versioning for a while.
Yeah.
Can you editorialize? Do you like branch versioning? Have you had any issues with branch versioning? That sort of thing. Your experience.
Yeah. So our experience with branch versioning, it has been, for the most part, awesome, because, even beyond just simple saving and discarding edits, it gives me the option to essentially save and discard an entire series of saved edits. And that actually happened. I was working on a subdivision, and it became very apparent very quickly that somehow this plat does not have enough information on it to actually draw it. I think the staff of years past just geo-referenced it like an aerial photo.
Right.
But I literally couldn't finish drawing the sub with what was on the plat. So, it stunk to get rid of, so many hours of work, but I was able to just go into my versions, manage versions, and I could just completely nuke the whole thing before I posted it. So I really like that. It gives me a little more freedom to work on something that might be involved, or if it just like all goes to hell, I can do like a massive hit the red button, undo everything without touching this.
So Cam just made a comment that you've been using it for long-term versions of big data cleanups and quick day-to-day versions. So for long transactions, like you're talking about, I can see where it may be beneficial.
Yeah.
Have you seen any slowdown when you have long transactions in there?
Maybe a little. I was working on. Let's turn off some of these layers. I hope it doesn't crash this time like it did last week. I was working on, where's Bristol Bay? I was working on a subdivision, redrawing this whole mess because the whole thing was like 20 feet off to the south, and there was a lot wrong with it. So I was coming in here to fix some things, add connections and all that. And I got a little ahead of myself, and I thought, well, as long as I'm doing this, I'll do the neighboring subdivisions too. And there's so many features in here that I couldn't post my version. There was so many changes that when I went to reconcile and post, it would time out.
And so is that with the latest version, the latest release, or is with
this was
2 or 3?
This was on 2. This
right.
was back on 10.8.1. And I can see there's still some spots I should clean up. Oh no, those are legit. Never mind. But anyway, you know, it was recommended to me in some of the defaults in Server Manager.
Right.
What was it? Cadastral.
Your timeout settings.
Yeah, the timeout settings, but even the timeout settings, like I had it so that I could be using an instance for ages, and it just still would not post. So I've had to since kind of make the rule that like do one subdivision at a time. Certainly don't try to do 5 ginormous subdivisions with like dozens of lots apiece, because you will break something. So that was one thing that we had to deal with was that. But for the most part, even when I was like, you know, thousands of parcels deep into that version, I didn't really see any performance impacts while I was in there doing editing. So that was kind of nice.
Have you been using, beyond just sort of the traditional type of versions, have you been going back and doing any moments with versions yet?
No, we haven't had to do that yet. I looked at it just for curiosity's sake. Back when we could connect directly to the SDE, there's a lot of neat stuff you can do with query layers to identify things updated, you know, from certain timestamps or from certain people, or to compare how much a feature has changed over its lifetime in your database. But we haven't been using version stuff. I've poked around at it, but it hasn't been super. We haven't found a good use for it yet, just because there's only 3 of us, and
right.
We know
right.
who's doing what. We don't have to go like, when did that change? And we'll go back, because most of the time when we're having the reaction, when did that change? The answer is 1988 when I was born, and there's no one I can blame for this anymore. So, you know, I think it'll become more useful as we have more history in here.
Okay. So Cam, by the way, why don't you unmute your mic, because I know you're putting a bunch of things over there, and I'm sure that Joshua wouldn't mind getting interrupted a little bit every once in a while. So can you give us some of your impressions, and how have you been going and using it? Yeah, there you go. You should be live now. Can't hear you yet, but it says your mic is on. So yeah, he's on a VM. So all right, well, we'll keep you unmuted, and I'll just keep asking some questions. So Joshua, one of the things I saw in there was I saw some adjustment layers. Have you been using any consistency checks or any sort of adjustments yet in the fabric?
Yeah, just a little bit. You know, let's see if any, I forget where they're even at. Let's drop things out. Where's mine now? Oh, wait, there's one. So we did use consistency check and a couple of other things. For the most part, you know, most of our data, especially with respect to boundaries, those were annotations before. So we don't actually have legitimate COGO on most of our lines. So running these checks is kind of useless for a lot of that. But this was one that I redrew from scratch. And the first time I ran it, it highlighted some big discrepancies up here. And it turns out, this is an issue I've had a bunch, when you use the divide tool, let's just pretend here. If I use the divide tool, on my lot line. If I use multiple distances, let's just see, because I'll just undo it.
I already know what you're going to say. Go ahead and say it.
Yeah, it's out of order. Or wait, I don't want duplicates. Let's say 66. We'll go in ascending order just to make this easier to track. But this bugs me. So 50, 60, 70, 80, the leftover should be 100. And I divide it. The shapes are right. But what's the COGO on them? I've got 50, 59, 60, 80, 70, 60. Perfect. No, it's completely wrong, and the remainder is being calculated off of a different segment. None of this just doesn't add up. I've only been able to use the single distance, and even then it's not good. It's not as good as using the percentage method either. So let me discard those. So I realized when I ran the consistency check that one of my divisions up here had gotten flip-flopped without my knowing it. And it was like, whoa, these are way off. And then I was able to fix them. So that was great because, you know, even a small sub, there's a lot of lines in here. I'm not going to check each one of them individually, but seeing that it says there's something wrong with this one and going in and looking at it. And in fact, there's not anything wrong with it. I think it's just like a weirdness of the of this subdivision. I have had subdivisions where I draw them up, everything has COGO on them, and then let's see, what's that one we're looking at? I don't know. I still don't know what a lot of this stuff is. I've barely dipped my toe in the analysis stuff, but you know, I've had some subdivisions like this one just across the way. You can't see it because even though everything has COGO and everything is entered exactly as the plat says, the analysis methods can't get this to coalesce to a single model in 15 iterations, even if I have the tolerance like way up. So there's just like, and I can tell you from drawing this, there are some bearings and distances that are just straight up missing from this. That made it really difficult to draw. And the consistency check was not able to handle the amount of data that was missing from these parcels. I can run a check on just this section or just this one, but if I try the whole subdivision, it fails on me. And so
it's not as scalable as we would like it to be.
Yeah. I mean, like so much else with the parcel fabric tools, they're great if your data is perfect.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then you're SOL because who knows what's happening.
So Cam, I think I hear you now.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
There you go.
Whoa.
Okay.
I haven't heard your voice in forever, man.
Yeah, we've both been working from home, and we just do text chat because who wants to do this? But I've been pretty happy with the fabric so far. I didn't really come from as much of a land records background as Josh did, so a lot of it was still kind of new to me. But I was able to pick it up pretty quick, in terms of what everything does with it. And a lot of the tools are super helpful that coming from what we had before, where it was basically eyeball it and don't use a topology, having everything align up is really nice, and being able to move points around and have that do everything. But
so let me ask you, what's your favorite tool then?
I've actually found that copy lines too is actually really useful lately.
And I was talking with Josh last week, and he said that was his favorite thing right now is copy lines too. Go ahead, Ken. It's
just super helpful because it's what's going into the record, and it's a good way to kind of get a clean start when you're dividing something up because I know when we first got the fabric, we ended up having to go work from home, which was a challenge to learn, and then we also had to learn how to use the fabric on top of that, and it was kind of crazy. And Josh and I have said we look back at some of the work we were doing then, and it's like, what were you doing? But as we've gotten more comfortable with it, it's been super helpful.
Yeah.
But it's just, I like the record system. It's nice. It's been helpful for me if I've have a member of the public call up and they're like, oh, what happened here? What happened with this? And you can just kind of look through stuff historically and all that. It's really valuable.
Yeah, I think that what's happening, and it's especially, as you've expanded the record system beyond what most people are doing, it allows you to go and look deeper and deeper into it to analyze some of your parcel data much more so than we were doing before. And I think,
and we've gotten creative with it. Like, I know for what we've been doing is instead of having one big polygon of, an incorporated area in our county, we've been breaking it up into the annexations of it and having each record of it. So you can kind of have a time slider of, oh, this is how this, area grew. And, it's been helpful for that because you can kind of see how these cities grew, and you couple that with like historic imagery, and you can almost just make maps like you're back in the time of when that data was entered. I mean, it's going to be a crazy task to get it all there, but that's a pretty valuable thing to have when, you get a title searcher that needs help putting something together.
Right. Yeah, so that brings up a couple other questions. Sure. Josh, last week you mentioned that you are backdating data. You are trying to fill in historic data. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I can. So not all the tools are built to do this. But if you know what you're doing, this was a split. I don't know that for sure, but I'm pretty sure. Actually, we could look at the lots. But, let's say when this all got imported, that's one lot. So one lot split into two parcels. When we migrated, these were already like this. And so they just show up as imported. So here's the real quick and dirty workflow. I'll create a record. It was done in 2014, and it was, this record recorded 2014, Valentine's Day at 3:30. And for backdating stuff, if I haven't seen the legal or I'll just stick a 7 on it. I don't have any way of, or I might have a way of assessing what I think the COGO accuracy is, but a lot of times I'll just stick that to 7. If I know when the prior staff processed it, like they did it, a month later, the same year, I'll put that in. Otherwise, I'll leave this blank because I don't want to put data in that I don't know. But as long as I have the recorded date. So now I have a record active. What I'll do is I'll get my parcels selected. And the first thing is I'll just say, I want to assign them to the record because this is the record that created them. So that's stop 1. You can see how bad some of this data is. The merge points tool has been a godsend for areas like this because why are there 3 or 4 points right here? There shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Why are there so many right there? Well, actually, that might be okay.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but if you are gonna switch over to Fabric and you're not in it, it's kind of worth sitting down for a little bit and pre-cleaning your data because we've lost a lot of time on messy imports. Which it's no one's fault. We just didn't know it was there, but it might be worth checking out for some things.
And Cam, just to let you know, we actually, Panda Consulting, when we do a migration, we spend some time to try to clean it up because that's one of the first things we look at is the fact you've got extra vertices, extra lines in there. And, and the data is such that we can't do it all, but we go and at least give them a start and then teach them in the training how to actually go and do that. So.
But I will say the tools have gotten better for cleaning up, as Josh
much better.
Showing.
Yeah, much better.
All right, so we've got this these two parcels. What I'll do is I'm going to merge them, but if I merge them with an active record, these are going to get retired, and I don't want that.
Yep.
So what I'll do, I'll open up my record, and I'll just copy the global ID, turn off the record. Now these are not going to be modified, because I'm merging into a new feature. And I'm going to merge them into 0503, 375. Let's say it was 005. And I'll say right away that it was retired by the record I'm working with. And if I know these other things, I'll put them in. Otherwise, no. Merge, boom, I have a historic parcel. What I can do now is I can go in, if I know the record that created it, I can assign it that way. Otherwise, I'll just click the plus so that it's not null, and that's just giving it a placeholder. Or I'll create an imported record and assign it to that. But then when I open this up, and then I'll want to build it, now the record geometry is in there if I turn it on. And if I go, no, I'm not going to save because I'm making this up right now. But now there is a record in the fabric, even though I haven't changed my current active features. But now there's a historic parent of these two. The only thing that this doesn't capture is the lines. And if I wanted, if you're on 2.7 or 2.7.3 or above, I can take these features, select the parcel features, and I could maybe say that I'll say that the record created those, but that's not always the case. The only lines that the record really created was the new subdivided north and south, and then the middle boundary. These ones were created by the same record that established the lot. So I don't really want to touch those.
Those are shared lines.
Yeah,
right.
That's where it can get really messy, is like keeping track of what line was created by what. But it is really valuable if I have a line and I copy lines 2. Well, I don't want to do that. You know, if I copy it, that new line has a parent line ID. And if I look at that other line, that's the global ID here. And that's really, you know, if you don't know this, when I build a record, and let's just do it. I have a line, and then the line with that same thing as its parent ID, and I haven't changed the geometry or the attributes. If I go and build this record, drum roll, huh? I'm not gonna do it. It should.
Will it build on top of itself with the same record?
No, what it's supposed to do, I think it only does it if it's retired. Anyway, let's say I had done copy lines 2 on the parent, left the sides alone. Or maybe I can just demonstrate that too. Let's pretend. I'm going to copy lines 2 on this one. And I'll just say show only active, right? So what it does, the parent parcel and the parent lines are all historic now. They're retired by this record. If I take, you know, if I take these 2 lines and I split them, but I don't touch the sides, that's really what I want to get into. And I'll just, stop. Okay, parcel line. And I just throw a 2-point line between those, and we'll create seeds and build. What you'll notice, oh, I split it right in half. It actually managed to not know what I'm doing. Okay, I split it right in half. And remember, I didn't modify the sidelines. If I select them now, there's no new one. It's the old one and it's active again. That's what the parent line ID is for. So when it sees that you actually didn't change the child line at all, that means that your record didn't modify the parent. And so it brings the parent back from retirement and sets it active again and gets rid of your child line. So that way, when I look at what did this record create, and I just deselect the parcels, it's only the top ones in the middle, not the sides.
So Josh, there was a long discussion about this in holistic testing.
Yeah.
Because this whole definition of shared lines and overlapping lines and how you track those.
Yeah.
So it's only when a line is different in some way from the original shared line does it actually get and capture some of this information. But otherwise, it's assumed that that line is supposed to be shared between these others, and you don't have to do anything to it. So,
right. So like I was working on a sub and unit 2 shared a boundary with unit 1.
Yep.
And on half of the shared boundaries, they updated the bearings. On half, they didn't. And so when I made those modifications, the ones that changed, the parents got retired, and the children ones got, those were active. And the ones I didn't change, it just reinstated the parents. So I had a way of tracking what was actually changed, or, and if I wanted to keep both active, I could just reactivate the parent parcel line as well. But I like that because when I'm drawing up this subdivision, I'm not going to draw 2 boundaries here. There's only one. But if I do copy lines 2 on this one, it has to be based on the topological relationship, not the record, because otherwise it's going to grab not enough or too much.
So here's some of the reasoning that went into this whole way that it was implemented. So there are different types of instances when you would share a line and when you would not share a line. So that shared lines primarily would be going into those, what we commonly call simultaneous conveyances. Those are where you get multiple polygons created at the same time, lots within a subdivision, all right? Sections within a township. Those are all shared lines between them, and you should not have lines on top of lines. However, if you're doing a tracking transactions and you have a deed that calls those lines out separately, it's assumed that those are going to have overlapping lines. Those lines are going to be unique to that record. And that's the reason why they're doing it that way. So it's kind of interesting the way they're implementing these shared versus overlapping lines. But yeah, it's a little bit tough when you're first trying to figure out what's going on and why is it doing it that way. So,
yeah.
So we're actually getting close to running out of time, even for 90 minutes. Okay.
I wanted to talk about one more thing, if possible, which was the hosted image layer.
Yes. I think thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's see if it'll do it this time. For some reason, it likes to kick me over to this thing and then not do it. Oh, good. All right. So when you're working with a hosted layer, this is this new, I think in 10.8.1. So normally the big limitation with hosted layers was the symbology, like line labeling for hosted lines is awful. You can only have straight labels and it looks goofy. But when you have a hosted layer now, let's say I've styled this and I'm using some fancy Maplex labeling that normally we'll just do, I don't know, basic polygon. If I've got something like rotated labels or callouts or really anything in Pro. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, let's say I wanted labels of the owners and I wanted them to rotate or curve. I don't know why, but let's say I wanted that. In a hosted layer, this can never happen on a web map. But what they've added is I can go in here. Here's this. I can say publish a layer from feature layer. And what that does is it'll create something that is registered in your server as a map image layer, but it references the hosted data. And why this is super cool is because I don't need to have a server running my boundaries layer, and I can still take advantage of all of the labeling options in ArcGIS Pro.
Just to clarify, when you say hosted layer, we're talking specifically hosted on your premises, not hosted on ArcGIS Online, correct?
Right. It's on our portal, but and I don't think online can do hosted image.
No, it cannot. It cannot. No. It's only on premises that you can do.
But anyway, so there's this. I've got my curved labels. I've got fancy dimension lines, radius information. You know, I've got sort of a more tax map style of labeling. It sets certain ones higher priority than others. I've got my PLSS corner point styles and scale visibility for different categories within the individual layer. So as I zoom in, more stuff shows up. This is all coming off of a hosted layer. So this is a pretty cool step forward in that I can have the nice labels and not have to have a published registered map image service that requires me to keep my SDE on 24/7. I can have this, and in fact, I do have this in like our public viewers so that you can have nicer to look at labels. And I don't remember if it's still open, but because it's a map image layer, let's just open something up here.
So while you're doing that, so Mr. Vander Sanden and Andrea, please pay attention to this. This is something we just learned about last week. This might be something to solve some of our issues regarding annotation and labels specifically for dimensions. Yeah.
All right, so I've got my tax map style of looking at a map. So I can, it's a web map. It's looking at entirely hosted layers, but it can sort of behave more like a map image layer and show me nice boundary labels. Where's my pin? There's my, oh, there we go. Just takes a second to label. And I will say hosted image layers for polygons, at least for the number of polygons we have, performed terribly. You'd be sitting here for 30 seconds waiting for it to load. So don't do it. But for lines, it seems to work fine. But anyway, because this is, where is it? Oh, it's in the base map on this one. Tax map boundaries, you can turn the individual ones on and off because it's a map image layer, just like a standard one. So, you know, you have this way of looking at different kinds of boundaries in the nice style, and I can do that off of one service. And because this is, because this is running off of my hosted layer, as soon as I update something in the fabric, by 5 o'clock, those changes are in there. It's only rendering current boundaries, not retired ones. So you can do that kind of stuff in a hosted image layer too. And I don't know, it's nice. I can have a nice looking map without having to run a big enterprise geodatabase. The couple of limitations I found though is also a hosted image layer is not going to honor definition queries. So if you use a definition query to pick what the active boundary lines are, it's going to miss those. You need to have the symbology being driven by whether or not it's active. And it's also, if I tried to have an arcade statement that if there's not a recorded COGO, to just grab the actual shape's length from the database, it won't do it. So arcade-based labels, for some reason, just don't evaluate on this side. You can make a hosted image layer that allows pop-ups, and just like any other, I mean, it's the same as any other map image layer. You can have it allow pop-ups and be queryable. I didn't want that. I just wanted basically an image. But since it's a hosted image layer, I'm not having to refresh vector tiles every week or republish something static. I can just let the server take care of it.
So, Joshua, we are coming up on 90 minutes. I'm going to
Yeah,
cut you off here.
that's
All
fine.
right?
Please
And
do.
but please, I really appreciate this. I think that we're going to ask you to come. First of all, stop sharing for a minute, and then all right. And I'm going to go and share this. You covered almost all the topics. The only thing that we didn't cover was subtypes, but that's all right.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to sort of maybe think about coming back for maybe our deep dives to talk about this, because I think there's a lot of interest in that being able to go and have a hosted image like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to go and I'm going to stop recording. And we're going to open everybody's mics because I think there might be some questions around here.
All right.
All right. So let me stop recording. Thank you all for attending this workshop. As you can tell, there's some really exciting things going on here. And let's open everybody's mic and see if we have any questions. Thank you, Joshua, again. Thank you, Cam. Thank you all. All right. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you have questions, would like some more details about anything we discussed during this workshop, or if you or anyone at your organization would like information about training, support, or ways in which we can help you with your GIS needs, please contact me at frank@pandaconsulting.com or call me at 561-691-3277, and we can discuss how we can help you with your needs.